Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Today I'm going to be talking about rock and metal soundtracks. So, soundtracks that feature hard rock and metal bands, or actually just some soundtracks that I quite like or that are memorable to me for one particular reason. So, maybe not all of them hard rock or metal, but most of them. Of course, my last video was about 80s and early 90s compilations that featured hard rock and metal. So this is kind of similar. Soundtracks usually featured a variety of different bands, showcasing at least one song, and you may or may not have heard that song when you went to watch the movie. Sometimes it plays at some point during the movie, or it might just play over the credits, or for some reason it's just on the soundtrack. A lot of these, because that's the kind of music I'm into. These soundtracks are hard rock and metal. At least that's why I've got the soundtrack, because sometimes the soundtrack had a whole mixture of different genres in it, but I pick up the soundtrack because it's got one or two hard rock or metal songs on there that I like. Others are really focused on the hard rock and the metal. Initially, I think, especially in the early 80s or mid 80s, soundtracks tended to be a lot more varied. And then as hard rock and metal became more popular, you started to see more soundtracks that were, based around the more rock or metal genre of music. So, including a lot more hard rock and metal bands on the soundtracks. So I'm going to start with some of my favourite ones, or ones that at least had a higher percentage of rock and metal songs on the soundtrack. This is a pretty well-known one. This is Shocker, of course. So all hard rock and metal on this one. Desmond Child had a lot to do with this, as he was a songwriter, and had a hand in most of the songs. I always find it interesting when I look at the soundtrack, because you go to the back and it just gives you the song titles. No mention of any of the bands, but which is kind of crazy when you think it's got Alice Cooper, Megadeth, Bonfire. Granted, it has Paul Stanley from Kiss, but it's, he's sort of in this all-star band that they're calling the Dudes of Wrath. Which they do the soundtrack, they do Shock Dance, and they do Shocker. But that's basically Paul Stanley and a few other people on those songs. But yeah, great soundtrack, and one of my favorite soundtracks. Next one, this one's a little bit more obscure, but it's a great soundtrack because again, it's all hard rock and metal, and this is Black Roses. I may have seen this movie back in the 80s, maybe. If I did see it, I probably just wanted to check it out because the storyline is based around a heavy metal band, but it's a horror. But at least they do put the bands on the back cover, so you can see, okay, who's on this one. So it's got Bang Tango. It's got a band called Black Roses, which essentially is King Cobra. Cobra? So it's basically those guys. If you look at the song credits and you look at the people performing on it, Maisie's also helping out there, and it does actually credit Black Roses and Maisie, Alex Maisie, as the artist. So good for checking out some early Bang Tango as well. I'm No Stranger. It's got Me Against the World by Lizzie Borden. And a couple of other bands I'm less familiar with. Hallows Eve and Tempest. Interesting that David Michael Phillips, who actually was in King Cobra, he's got his own song on here called King of Cool. Alright, so that's another favourite of mine. Now this one's interesting. It's one of those, is it even a soundtrack really? Because it's a soundtrack to Nintendo White Knuckle Scoring, and to be honest with you, it's one of those soundtracks that I had to get just for a couple of songs. In fact, really, just one song, quite an obscure song, It's the song Magic in the Night by a group called Bombshell. If you're not familiar with them, I totally understand. They didn't end up releasing an album, but basically it's a couple of the ladies from Vixen who put this band together, and they have this one song called Magic in the Night, which is an awesome song. I only discovered it not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, considering it came out in 1991. Awesome song. So I had to get the soundtrack and really wanted to get it on vinyl if I could. Not easy to get on vinyl. But yeah, awesome song. Shame they didn't put out any more material. It does also have Trickster, Line of Fire, and Alias, Into the Fire. But and Britney Fox, Turn On. So I mean, there's a bit of hard rock on there. But yeah, this is the Bombshell track that I got that for. Right, next up, this one is quite a well-known soundtrack. I don't think the movie's that well-known, but the soundtrack seems to be in bargain bins all over the place when I go to music shops or look online. And this is a Dudes. I haven't seen the movie, but it's got Wasp, Megadeth, Keel, Jane's Addiction on the soundtrack. Mountain Song is the Jane's Addiction song, which is my favourite Jane's Addiction song. So nice to have that. Show No Mercy is a sort of like a B-side from Wasp, so cool to have that song. Otherwise, some of the other choices, not necessarily what I would have gone for. But, good soundtrack though. Now I've got a couple of wrestling related soundtracks here. So this is from a movie called Bad Guys. Now, to be honest, I'm not that familiar with the soundtrack. I haven't heard it that much, but I thought I must have seen it somewhere. Thought this would be interesting to pick up. And it does have the band Precious Metal and their song Bad Guys. So they've got the title track, Precious Metal, sort of all-female hard rock band from the 80s. Then there's some other groups on here that's not hard rock or metal at all. Good for that Precious Metal song. And the other wrestling one I've got is called Body Slam. Again, pretty obscure, and again, haven't seen the movie. I don't think, maybe I have. But as far as artists are concerned, the go-to song for me is again pretty obscure band, a band called Kick, and they've got two songs on here: Rock and Roll Heart and Push. I think Push is the one I quite like the most. Well, I like the most, but yeah, Kick. 80s hard rock's pretty good, so yeah, worth having for that. It does have other bands on here, Bachman Turner Overdrive. That's about the only other artist that's particularly well known. Now we're moving on to a soundtrack that has a movie that has two soundtracks. So it has two soundtracks because there's two movies. So it had a sequel. So the first one is Iron Eagle. And this is good having because it's got Dio, Hide in the Rainbow. Not Rainbow in the Dark. This is Hide in the Rainbow. This is a different song. And Dio kind of cops a bit of flack, I guess, for seemingly being obsessed with rainbows and dragons and so forth. So maybe he shouldn't have had another song with rainbow in the title, but it's a pretty good song, and it doesn't feature on the album, so it's on his studio album, so it's it's a B-side, so you can find it on here. Apart from that, you've got King Cobra again featuring on here, and they actually had a video for this, and they had the title track Iron Eagle, Never Say Die. There's Eric Martin on here, Queen, One Vision. Not bad. And then Iron Eagle 2, I think the movie, the sequel was less successful. And probably the soundtrack also perhaps not as good. Although, I do like the fact it's got some exclusive tracks on here. Well, B-sides again. Living on the Edge from Britney Fox and I Got a Line on You by Alice Cooper. They're the two sort of tracks for me that I go for when I want to play that soundtrack. Next up, I think it's a pretty obscure movie, but I wanted to get the soundtrack because Well, the movie's Savage Streets, and the reason I wanted to get the soundtrack was, believe it or not, John Farnham, who's from Australia. He's more of a pop artist, really. More well known as more of a pop artist, not really a hard rocker. But in the mid '80s, when this movie came out, he was sort of going down that kind of AOR hard rock sound, and Justice for One, Innocent Hearts, Nothing's Gonna Stand in Our Way. Actually, pretty good songs, and The Quiet Ones you got to watch. So it's the John Farnham songs that I got this for. So that's worth checking out if you like a bit of AOR hard rock, mid '80s hard rock, and yeah, John Farnham. And you can pick up some of those songs as singles as well. Next one, Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise movie, of course. I was a bit disappointed with the David Coverdale song, Last Note of Freedom. Of course, he didn't write the music, and in fact, it says here the lyrics are by Billy Idol, which is kind of interesting. But I do like Hearts in Trouble by Chicago. Not particularly into Chicago, but I heard that song and I thought, I really like that. So that's just my pick as the song I like. It does have Knocking on Heaven's Door, of course, by Guns N' Roses, but that featured on their album. It's got Joan Jett, but yeah, not really a soundtrack I listen to very much. But yeah, like I said, probably the one and only Chicago song I know and like, but it's on the soundtrack. Now this one here, Navy SEALs, I pretty much just got for the Mr. Big song. So there's two Mr. Big songs on here, Strike Like Lightning and Shadows. They are not on any Mr. Big album, and they're quite good hard rock songs. Mr. Big didn't write them. I don't think Mr. Big particularly overly engaged or enthusiastic about these songs. But they recorded them, put them out, and I like them. They didn't, like I said, they didn't write the songs, but they're pretty good songs. You can't find them as B-sides on some of their singles. Strike Like Lightning and Shadows are the songs. I guess I can understand why they didn't go on the albums, but yeah, they're cool B-sides, and like I said, you can find it on the soundtrack. It's also got The Boys Are Back in Town by Bon Jovi, which is one of their B-sides. Alright, next up, Highlander II. Only reason I got this, it's got a song called One Dream by the Lou Gramm Band, which kind of evolved into Shadow King. A band that Lou Gramm started up with, Vivian Campbell. He was the guitarist, and it doesn't have that song on the Shadow King album. It's a pretty good song, so that's really my only reason for having this soundtrack. I like that song. We're checking out. Now I haven't seen this movie, believe it or not. The movie is called Beach Balls. Interesting looking cover. To be honest, I picked it up cheap, and the hype sticker says a rock party from Los Angeles with a parade of new bands vying for stardom. So it features Hands Naughty, Puss in Boots, Dr. Star, Temporary Insanity, Black Monday, Castle Black, Mox Nix, and Strut. Can't say I've heard of any of them except for Hands Naughty. I was aware of a little bit. Very obscure sort of heavy metal band. And I played this and I thought, it might be some like kind of cool, obscure heavy metal or something. But and I guess that's in theory what it is. But it's not the greatest, at least in my opinion. Alright, next one up. This is a slightly old movie, I suppose. Actually 1986, it's not that old. I didn't see it when it came out. I don't think I did, but Kevin Bacon, he was in quite a few movies around this time. So, actually, I think maybe I did see it. But anyway, yes, I think I probably did. Only got this because, as you know, if you've watched my channel, I am a bit of a fan of Fiona, and she has an exclusive track that isn't on her albums, and it's called Casual Thing, and it's a really good song. She didn't write it, had nothing to do with the writing of the song, but it's a good song, and so that's the only real standout track for me on the soundtrack. Not much else. But I've got a few, and there's a few more soundtracks coming up that I basically just have just for those one or two songs, and that would be that one on that one. All right. Talking of old soundtracks now, this one's definitely old. 1978. This one came out, and it's quite a classic, well-known one. It's War of the Worlds, so not hard rock or metal at all, really. But I just wanted to show it just because, I picked this up super cheap. It's a pretty banged up sort of record, but it plays, and it's more of a childhood sort of thing where I remember listening to this as a kid, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit. Aliens invading. But what really freaked me out was it comes with this really nice booklet, which is really well, has some amazing pictures. But I remember looking at this picture in particular with all the blood everywhere. I was like, that was pretty freaky, I thought, back in the day. And the songs I like. I mean, it does have Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. I wasn't really aware of him at the time when I was listening to this as a kid, but he is on the soundtrack, and it does have a song that I still really enjoy listening to now, and Autumn's Leaves, I think it's called. No, Forever Autumn, sorry. Yeah, Forever Autumn. That's a great song. Another soundtrack, this one's a little bit similar to Quicksilver. Just one song on it, but I thought I've got to pick it up just for that one. Well, actually, shouldn't really say one song, but one song that I like. It's got a couple of other songs as well that aren't too bad. But the song I like is another one of those sort of obscure artists. It's by first here's the soundtrack. It's called No Small Affair, and the artist is Chrissy Faith, and she does this song called Hot Headed. And it's pretty cool, sort of mid-80s rock. Worth checking out if you like a bit of mid-80s sort of hard rock, AOR. But it does also have I'll Never Grow Up and by Twisted Sister and Shoot 'Em Down by Twisted Sister. So there is a little bit more of hard rock metal on that soundtrack worth checking out. I wanted to feature this one's this is my oldest soundtrack. This is Easy Rider. Not really into, I don't have a lot of 70s. I'm not into a lot of 70s rock, but The Pusher by Steppenwolf and Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf are the first two tracks off here. And obviously I was very familiar with Born to Be Wild, but I think The Pusher is an underrated song, and I really like hearing that one. So, got that soundtrack just really for those two songs. Some people I've heard say this is the greatest soundtrack of all time. I don't know if that's true. It's definitely not my favourite Rocky movie, but this is Rocky 4, and it would be the best soundtrack from the Rocky, I'd say. So, it's got Burning Heart by Survivor. It's got Eye of the Tiger. It's got, again, by Survivor. It's got an artist called Touch, which is actually the vocalist from Bullet Boys, and a song called The Sweetest Victory, which is pretty good. I quite enjoy Living in America by James Brown. But yeah, it's a bit hit and miss. But like I said, some people think it's one of the best soundtracks ever, and I wouldn't go that far, but it's good to have in the collection. Alright, now we're going to get to, now we're kind of getting to the sort of early 90s, and music's changing a little bit, and we're getting those grunge bands coming in. So, as far as soundtracks in my collection, now I'd really have to start showing you CDs. So, but I do have, this is the last Action Hero. This is quite an interesting soundtrack because this is really shows that hard rock and hair metal is sort of fading out and grunge is coming in. You've still got some of the old bands in here, so you've still got your Def Leppards and Tesla, AC/DC's in here, but then you've also got Alice in Chains, the thrash bands are coming through here now, Megadeth, Anthrax. You've even got Cypress Hill on here. So you can kind of see that music, what's popular in hard rock and metal is starting to change a little bit. It's getting more alternative or getting heavier, perhaps. And so this is quite an interesting soundtrack. But yeah, I don't have. You can get this on vinyl. I don't have it on vinyl. I do have. I've got this interesting promo copy. So this is a promo of the album, and it's got 5 tracks on it. So it's cool to have. It's got The Last Action Hero by Tesla, which is a good song. Cock the Hammer, Cypress Hill, Poison My Eyes by Anthrax. On the other side, it's got Angry Again by Megadeth and What the Hell Have I by Alice in Chains. So some of the better songs, I think, from the soundtrack. You could have had Big Gun by AC/DC, because I like that one. But yeah, so I've got that, which is cool. So yeah, some vinyl that's come out recently. Yeah, that or some soundtracks that have come out recently that I do have on vinyl because they've been reissued. I've got End of Days. So this came out late 90s. It's got Korn, Limp Bizkit, Guns N' Roses. A lot of people might forget Guns N' Roses, their first song for quite some time, Oh My God, which I really like. I really like Oh My God, it's a good song. Rob Zombie, yeah, very much music for that time that was popular at that time. Man 5000. This would be one of my favourite soundtracks. This is Spawn, and I was really pleased that this got released on vinyl. May have even been released on vinyl back in the day, actually, when it originally came out, but this is a reissue. Music on vinyl, they do a great job. Yeah, this came out in 1997, and it's a really nice mix. I was never really been into dance music particularly, but I was starting to enjoy some of this, artists like Prodigy and to be honest, I don't know, Atari Teenage Riot, yeah, but they weren't really dance. They were kind of heavy. Chemical Brothers, although I don't think that they're on here. Crystal Method though, yeah, I was into them a little bit. Those kind of hard techno, that sort of quite aggressive kind of dance techno music. I was starting to enjoy some of that. So what they did was they kind of teamed up, and you had some of the heavy artists and with some of those sort of techno artists. So you've got Prodigy and Tom Morello. You've got who else? Dust Brothers and Korn, Filter and Crystal Method, Marilyn Manson, Sneaker Pimps. Some good songs on here. I love the Filter song. Can't You Trip Like I Do? That's really good. I like Prodigy and Tom Morello, One Man Army. That's awesome. Yeah. So some really good songs on there. Another one that's quite similar to that I don't have on vinyl and has been reissued on vinyl is the Judgement Knight soundtrack. So I've got the CD of that somewhere. Yeah, here it is. Judgement Knight soundtrack. So that's kind of similar, but that was like rock and metal bands collaborating with hip hop, and that's kind of similar to the Spawn soundtrack. So really now all I'm left with as far as soundtracks is concerned are the CDs that I have in my collection. So I'm not going to go through all of them. Ones that I guess relate to the 80s or early 90s, the hard rock bands that I don't have on vinyl, but you can get. The Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure. You can get that on vinyl, and it's got a lot of those 80s bands like Extreme, Shark Island, Power Tool, which I think actually is Nelson Band, Tora Tora, and a lot of those are exclusive tracks, so they weren't on their albums. Then the follow-up, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. This one's, I'd quite like to get this on vinyl. It's got a couple of good songs on here. It's a bit hit and miss, but I like the Slaughter song, Shout It Out, and Battle Stations by Winger. Both those songs are not on their albums. It's got Megadeth. Megadeth seem to get on a lot of soundtracks around this time. And a few other bands that are not too bad, but yeah, not necessarily my thing. Last one I'll mention, just because it does have a few 80s bands on here, and this came out in 1998 or 97, something like that, and it's Armageddon, and it's got Journey, it's got Aerosmith, some good songs from them actually. The standout song for me, interesting, was the John Bon Jovi song, Mr. Big Time. It rocks really hard, and it's very disappointing that when he released his solo album, I think he released his solo album like a year later, his debut solo album, well, if you don't count Blaze of Glory, which is more of a soundtrack. That probably should be here as well, shouldn't it? Blaze of Glory, I forgot all about that one. Yeah, so he released his debut album about a year after this, and I was hoping it was going to be like Mr. Big Time. Nothing like it, of course, at all. But it's a song he wrote with Aldo Nova, and if you haven't heard it, worth checking out. It's really one of my go-to songs from the soundtrack. Alright, and like I said, the rest of my soundtracks are all on CDs, but they're all kind of more recent, more modern rock, new metal, alternative rock, grunge kind of bands. So I think I'll leave that for today. I'm already at 26 minutes. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you later. See ya.